The great hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with the usual sounds of interstellar politics. Representatives from dozens of alien species sat in their floating pods, discussing trade routes and minor territorial disputes. At the far end of the chamber, in one of the smallest and least decorated seats, sat Dongmin Park, the human ambassador to the galaxy. Dongmin looked exactly like what the aliens expected from humanity. He was small compared to most species in the room, wore simple clothes, and carried only a basic data pad. His ship, which the aliens had seen docked outside, was nothing more than a modified cargo vessel. The other ambassadors barely acknowledged his presence, treating him like a representative of some backward mining colony. Another human merchant vessel was attacked yesterday, Dongmin said quietly when his turn came to speak. The ship was carrying medical supplies to the outer colonies. 3 crew members were killed. General Tae-Hun Lee of the Altarian Defense Force barely looked up from his own data pad. "Pirates are a common problem in that sector," he said with a dismissive wave of his forearms. "Perhaps humans should avoid dangerous areas if they cannot defend themselves." Several alien delegates laughed at this comment. The Zephyrians, a warrior race known for their aggression, found the idea of weak humans particularly amusing. Their representative, a massive creature with scales and sharp teeth, grinned widely. "Humans should stick to mining asteroids," the Zephyrian said loudly. "Leave space travel to species that can handle it." Dongmin nodded politely and returned to his seat. He had heard these insults for years now, ever since humans had first made contact with the galactic community. The aliens saw humanity as a useful but weak species, good for manual labor and resource extraction, but not much else. What none of them knew was that Dongmin was recording every word, every gesture, every detail about their military capabilities and political relationships. Hidden inside his simple datapad was technology far more advanced than anything the aliens possessed. After the meeting ended, Dongmin walked slowly back to his quarters in the human embassy. The building was small and unremarkable, located in the diplomatic quarters' least desirable section. Other ambassadors lived in towering spires that reached into the clouds. But the human embassy was just 3 stories tall and made of basic materials. Inside his office, Dongmin activated a hidden panel in his desk. The wall slid away to reveal a sophisticated communications center that would have shocked any alien who saw it. He began typing his daily report, documenting everything he had learned about alien fleet movements, weapon capabilities, and political tensions. Meanwhile, in space above the planet, Captain So Young Kim piloted her merchant vessel through the shipping lanes. Her ship, the Soul's Pride, looked like any other human cargo hauler from the outside. It was bulky, slow-looking, and painted in the dull colors that humans seem to prefer. But appearances were deceiving. Hidden beneath the ship's ordinary exterior were sensors more powerful than anything in the alien military. So Young and her crew had been mapping every star system, cataloging every space station, and analyzing every alien ship they encountered. "Captain, we're getting another scan from that hegemony patrol ship," reported her navigator, Hyun-Sik Choi. Like everyone on the crew, he appeared to be a simple merchant sailor, but he was actually a highly trained intelligence operative. "Let them scan," So Young replied. "Make sure they see exactly what we want them to see." The alien patrol ship's sensors would detect a cargo hold full of rare metals and basic life support systems. They would never realize that the ship's true cargo was a complete intelligence-gathering array that was currently downloading data from their own computers. This had been going on for 30 years now, ever since humans had first encountered the galactic community. Every human ship, every human colony, every human representative was part of an elaborate intelligence operation. The aliens thought they were dealing with a primitive species that had barely mastered space travel. In reality, they were being studied by one of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. Deep in the lower levels of the human embassy, Dr. Young-Soo Choi worked in his hidden laboratory. The room was filled with alien technology that humans had acquired through various means over the years. Some had been purchased legally, some had been salvaged from pirate attacks, and some had been obtained through methods that the aliens would never suspect. Young-Soo carefully examined a Zephyrian plasma rifle that had been recovered from a recent skirmish. His analysis showed that the weapon was actually quite primitive compared to human technology, despite the Zephyrians' reputation as fierce warriors. The power source was inefficient, The targeting system was slow, and the overall design had several critical weaknesses. Interesting, he muttered to himself as he made notes on his computer. They still haven't figured out quantum energy conversion. Their weapons are at least 50 years behind ours. This information would be transmitted back to Earth using quantum entanglement communication, a technology that the aliens didn't even know was possible. Every day, vast amounts of intelligence flowed back to humanity's real military command, hidden deep in Earth's solar system. The aliens believed that Earth was humanity's only major world, with a few small colonies scattered in nearby systems. They had no idea that humans had been secretly expanding for decades, building hidden bases in alternate dimensions and pocket realities that existed outside normal space. Back on the merchant ship, So Young received a priority message through the quantum communication system. She read it quickly, then called her crew together in the ship's conference room. "We just got new orders," she announced. "Command wants us to test Zephyrian response times in the Kepler sector. We're going to stage another pirate attack." Her crew nodded. They had done this dozens of times before. A pirate attack on a human vessel would draw alien military response, allowing the humans to study their tactics, weapons, and ship capabilities. The aliens never suspected that the pirates were actually other human operatives, and that the attacks were carefully choreographed to gather intelligence. "Remember," So Young continued, "we need to make it look real. Take some actual damage, lose some cargo, and make sure our distress calls sound genuine. The more convinced they are that we're helpless, the better." As the Soul's Pride changed course toward the Kepler sector, its crew prepared for another performance in the greatest deception in galactic history. For 30 years, humanity had played the role of weak, primitive traders while secretly building the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever seen. The aliens looked down on humans, laughed at their supposed weakness, and treated them as barely worthy of notice. They had no idea that every insult, every threat, and every act of aggression was being carefully recorded and analyzed by a species that had turned deception into an art form. Soon, very soon, the galaxy would learn the truth about humanity. But for now, the deception continued, and the aliens remained blissfully unaware that they were not the hunters in this relationship. They were the prey. Warlord Krextar stood on the bridge of his massive warship, looking out at the stars with satisfaction. As the supreme commander of the Zephyrian Empire's military forces, he controlled over 10,000 battleships and ruled dozens of conquered worlds. Today, he had decided to solve what he saw as the human problem. "Humans have grown too comfortable," he growled to his officers, his scaled face twisting into what passed for a smile among his species. "They think they can trade freely in our space, take profits that should belong to superior races. This ends today." The Zephyrian Empire was known throughout the galaxy as the most aggressive member of the Galactic Council. They had built their power through conquest and intimidation, and they saw humans as nothing more than convenient targets. Recent reports showed that human trade operations were becoming quite profitable, and this angered the Zephyrians greatly. "Send the message to all human vessels," Krextar ordered. "From now on, they will pay a 90% protection tax on all cargo. Any ship that refuses will be destroyed immediately." The message was broadcast across multiple star systems, reaching every human merchant vessel in Zephyrian space. Most alien species would have immediately complied with such a demand, knowing that resistance meant death. But humans had a different response. Captain Hyun Woo Nam received the message while his cargo ship, the Busan Wanderer, was traveling through the Outer Rim. His ship was carrying medical supplies to a human colony that had been hit by a plague outbreak. The cargo was desperately needed, and a 90% tax would make the medicine too expensive for the colonists to afford. Hyunwoo gathered his crew of 43 in the ship's main cargo bay. They were all volunteers who had signed up knowing the risks of operating in alien space. Like all human merchants, they were actually highly trained operatives working for Earth's intelligence services. "You all heard the message," Hyunwoo said calmly. "Command has given us clear instructions. We proceed with our mission as planned." His crew nodded. They knew what this meant. For 30 years, humans had been carefully building their reputation as weak and submissive. But there came a time when that reputation had to be tested, when the aliens had to be shown that humans were not as helpless as they appeared. 3 hours later, a squadron of Zephyrian warships intercepted the Busan Wanderer, The alien vessels were massive compared to the human cargo ship, bristling with weapons and armored like flying fortresses. Their commander, Captain Vexnall, opened a communication channel. "Human vessel, you will immediately transfer 90% of your cargo to our ships," the Zephyrian commanded. "Comply now or be destroyed." Hyunwoo appeared on the screen looking exactly like what the aliens expected from a human merchant captain. He was small, appeared nervous, and seemed completely outmatched by the massive alien warships surrounding him. "I'm sorry, but I cannot comply with that request," Hyunwoo said politely. "We are carrying medical supplies to a colony suffering from disease. These people will die without this medicine." Captain Vexnall laughed, a harsh sound that echoed across the communication channel. "Human weakness disgusts me. You value the lives of strangers over your own survival. This is why your species will never amount to anything." Without any further warning, the Zephyrian ships opened fire. The Busan Wanderer's shields collapsed immediately under the massive assault. The ship's hull was torn apart by plasma cannons and quantum torpedoes. Within seconds, the vessel was completely destroyed, scattered across 3 solar systems as burning debris. Hyunwoo and his crew of 43 died instantly, vaporized in the nuclear fire of the alien weapons. But their sacrifice was not in vain. Every moment of the attack was recorded by hidden sensors throughout the system, sensors that the Zephyrians didn't know existed. The destruction of the Busan Wanderer was broadcast across the galaxy as a demonstration of Zephyrian power. The message was clear. This was what happened to species that defied the Empire's will. Most aliens watched the footage and nodded approvingly, seeing it as a necessary lesson in respecting superior military force. But the galaxy was not prepared for humanity's response. 48 hours after the attack, Ambassador Dongmin Park requested an emergency session of the Galactic Council. Representatives from all major species gathered in the Great Chamber, expecting to hear the usual human response: diplomatic protests, economic sanctions, and eventual surrender to Zephyrian demands. Instead, Dongmin stood calmly at the speaker's podium and delivered a message that would change galactic history forever. "Members of the Council," he began, his voice steady and clear. 72 hours ago, Zephyrian forces murdered 43 innocent humans who were delivering medical supplies to plague victims. This was an act of unprovoked genocide. Warlord Krextar, attending the session via hologram from his flagship, laughed openly. "Genocide? 43 dead humans? Your species breeds like insects. What is 43 lives compared to the natural order of the galaxy?" Dongmin ignored the insult and continued speaking. "You have 72 hours to surrender the perpetrators for trial under galactic law. This is your only warning." The chamber erupted in shocked laughter. Councillor Vexmira of the Hegemony, a species known for their diplomatic skills, actually fell off her floating platform from laughing so hard. The idea that humans, the weakest species in the galaxy, would issue ultimatums to the mighty Zephyrian Empire was beyond absurd. "Warning?" Krextar snarled. "You dare threaten us? Perhaps we should teach your species a more permanent lesson about respecting your betters." Even humanity's few allies in the galaxy were horrified by Dongmin's words. Ambassador Kaelin of the peaceful Kepler Federation immediately approached the human representative after the session. "You must withdraw that statement," she urged. "The Zephyrians will use this as an excuse to attack your homeworld. Earth cannot survive a full-scale assault from their fleet." Dongmin smiled sadly at the alien diplomat who had always been kind to humanity. "Thank you for your concern, Kaelin, but some lines cannot be crossed. Some prices are too high to pay, even for peace." What none of the aliens knew was that across human space a transformation was beginning. Men and women who had spent decades living as miners, traders, and diplomats were abandoning their cover identities and revealing their true nature. Colonel Min Ho, CO, had spent 15 years pretending to be an asteroid miner in the Titan Belt. His mining station was actually a heavily fortified command center, and his mining equipment was some of the most advanced military hardware in the galaxy. As soon as he received the activation code, he threw off his disguise and began preparing for war. Commander Ji Eun-bae had been working as a cultural anthropologist on the peaceful world of Haven Prime, studying alien social structures and writing research papers that nobody read. In reality, she was the captain of a massive dreadnought that had been hidden in subspace for over a decade, waiting for this moment. All across the galaxy, Similar transformations were taking place. The weak, helpless humans that the aliens had dismissed and ignored were revealing themselves to be something far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. As the 72-hour deadline approached, the Zephyrian Empire prepared for what they expected to be an easy victory. Krexter assembled the largest fleet in his empire's history, determined to make an example of humanity that would terrify any other species that might consider defying Zephyrian authority. "We will not just destroy their ships," he announced to his officers. "We will enslave their colonies, sell their children in the markets, and turn their homeworld into a monument to Zephyrian power." The aliens throughout the galaxy watched and waited, expecting to witness the complete destruction of the human species. None of them realized that they were about to see something that would change their understanding of power, warfare, and humanity forever. The 72 hours were almost up, and the galaxy held its breath, waiting to see how this impossible confrontation would end. The 72-hour deadline passed without any sign of human surrender. Instead of backing down, the humans seemed to have completely disappeared from galactic communication networks. Their merchant ships stopped responding to calls, their colonies went silent, and even Ambassador Dongmin Park vanished from the diplomatic quarter. Warlord Krextar was delighted by this development. He interpreted the silence as evidence that humans had finally realized their hopeless situation and were preparing to surrender unconditionally. To celebrate his victory before it was even complete, he ordered attacks on 2 more human installations. The space station New Busan was the first target. It was a peaceful research facility where human scientists studied asteroid mining techniques. The Zephyrian fleet surrounded the station and demanded immediate surrender. When no response came, they opened fire with everything they had. The station was destroyed in minutes along with over 800 human researchers, engineers, and their families. The debris field would remain visible for years, a monument to Zephyrian power and human helplessness. The second attack targeted the agricultural colony of New Seoul. This was where humans grew food crops that were specially designed to grow in alien soil conditions. The colonists were farmers, teachers, and children who had never seen warfare. They posed no military threat to anyone. The Zephyrian ground forces landed without opposition and rounded up the entire population of 3,000 humans. They were loaded onto slave ships and transported to the Empire's labor camps, where they would spend the rest of their lives working in the mines and factories that powered Zephyrian civilization. Krextar broadcast both attacks across the galaxy, showing the burning wreckage of the space station and the long lines of human slaves being marched onto transport ships. His message was clear. This was the fate of any species that dared to defy the Zephyrian Empire. "Let this be a lesson to all inferior races," he declared. "Humans thought they could threaten us with their pathetic ultimatum. Instead, they have learned what happens when weaklings challenge their superiors." The galaxy watched in fascination and horror. Most alien species felt that humans had brought this destruction upon themselves by refusing to accept their proper place in the galactic order. A few, like the Kepler Federation, expressed quiet sympathy for the victims, but none were willing to risk Zephyrian anger by offering actual help. As Krextar celebrated his easy victory, something unprecedented happened. Every communication device in the galaxy, from personal data pads to massive space station arrays, suddenly activated simultaneously. A transmission was coming through on frequencies that most species didn't even know existed. The image that appeared on screens throughout known space was unlike anything the aliens had seen before. It showed the bridge of what appeared to be a human warship, but the vessel was larger than anything in the galactic records. The walls were made of materials that seemed to bend light itself, and the technology visible in the background was clearly centuries beyond anything the aliens possessed. Standing at the center of this impossible ship was a human who introduced himself as Admiral Sung-ho Jung. Unlike the weak, nervous humans that the galaxy was used to seeing, this man radiated calm confidence and quiet authority. He wore a uniform that was obviously military in nature, and his bearing was that of someone accustomed to command. "Citizens of the galaxy," Admiral Jang began, his voice carrying clearly across every communication system in known space. "My name is Admiral Sung-ho Jang of the Human Shadow Fleet. For 30 years, you have known humanity as a species of peaceful traders and humble colonists. Today I must inform you that this was not entirely accurate. The transmission switched to show the interior of his ship, and what the aliens saw defied everything they thought they knew about human capabilities. The vessel's corridors stretched as far as the eye could see, filled with humans who were clearly not merchants or miners. These were soldiers, and they were unlike any military force the galaxy had ever encountered. The humans moved with perfect coordination and inhuman speed. Their armor incorporated technology that the aliens couldn't even identify, and their weapons appeared to be based on physical principles that shouldn't have been possible. Some soldiers seemed to phase in and out of existence, while others moved so quickly that they appeared as blurs to the recording devices. What you have seen for the past 3 decades, Admiral Zhang continued, were volunteers from our intelligence division. Every human merchant, every colonial administrator, every diplomatic representative was an operative gathering information about your military capabilities, political structures, and technological limitations. The transmission showed images that shocked the alien viewers even more than the advanced technology. They saw human merchant ships transforming into sophisticated weapons platforms. They watched mining equipment reveal itself as scanning arrays more powerful than anything in the alien military. They observed agricultural colonies opening hidden doors to reveal underground military installations. "We know the location of every alien fleet," the admiral stated calmly. "We have analyzed every weapon system, mapped every trade route, and monitored every political discussion. For 30 years you have been completely transparent to us while we remained invisible to you." On the Zephyrian flagship, Warlord Krextar stared at the transmission in growing horror. This had to be some kind of elaborate hoax, a desperate attempt by humans to frighten the Empire into showing mercy. No species could hide this kind of military power for 3 decades without anyone noticing. "Impossible," he growled to his officers. "Humans are primitive. We have seen their technology. We have captured their ships. They are barely more advanced than the species we conquered 1,000 years ago." But as Admiral Zhang continued his revelation, it became clear that this was no hoax. The transmission showed the truth that humans had hidden so carefully for so long. Earth was not humanity's only major world. Hidden in alternate dimensions and pocket realities that existed outside normal space, humans had built an empire that dwarfed anything in the known galaxy. The ships that the aliens had seen and captured were deliberate fakes, designed to hide humanity's real technological capabilities. The weapons and equipment that Dr. Young-Soo Choi had allowed aliens to examine were outdated models, created specifically to maintain the illusion of human weakness. "Every piece of technology you have seen from us was at least 50 years behind our current capabilities," Admiral Zhang explained. "We needed you to underestimate us while we completed our preparations for this moment." The transmission showed glimpses of human industrial capacity that staggered the imagination. Factories the size of moons churned out warships that incorporated technology beyond alien comprehension. Entire solar systems had been converted into massive military installations, hidden from alien detection by dimensional cloaking systems. But perhaps the most shocking revelation was the scope of human enhancement. The soldiers visible in the transmission were not normal humans. They had been modified with technology that made them living weapons, capable of surviving in vacuum, regenerating from fatal wounds, and processing information faster than alien computers. "The humans you killed on the Busan Wanderer," Admiral Zhang said, his voice carrying a note of steel, "were heroes who volunteered to maintain our cover story even at the cost of their lives. Their sacrifice and the suffering of the innocents you have murdered and enslaved will not be forgotten." The transmission ended with a simple message that chilled every alien who heard it. "You have been warned." Across the galaxy, panic began to spread. If humans had been hiding this kind of power for 30 years, what else might they be capable of? How many other species might have similar secrets? The foundation of galactic civilization, built on the assumption that military power was obvious and measurable, had just collapsed. Admiral Zhang's revelation had changed everything. The weak, helpless humans that the aliens had dismissed and abused were actually the most powerful military force in known space. And now, for the first time in 30 years, they were no longer hiding. The galaxy would never be the same again. The first demonstration of humanity's true power began 12 hours after Admiral Zhang's transmission ended. Captain Sojin Kwan, formerly known as a simple cargo hauler operating near the Outer Rim, revealed her true identity as commander of the stealth cruiser Guangzhou's Vengeance. Her ship materialized inside the Zephyrian home system, like a ghost becoming solid. One moment the space near their capital world was empty, and the next moment a human warship was floating there, having somehow passed through the Empire's entire defensive network without being detected. The vessel was unlike anything in the alien databases. It seemed to be made of materials that bent light around them, making the ship appear translucent and otherworldly. Strange energy fields flickered along its hull, and the weapon systems were based on principles that Zephyrian scientists couldn't even identify. "This is impossible," General Mextar shouted from the command center of the planetary defense grid. "No ship can penetrate our sensor networks. Nothing can phase through solid matter." But Captain Quan's ship had done exactly that. The Guangzhou's Vengeance had somehow existed in a state that allowed it to pass through the defensive satellites, the patrol ships, and even the massive space stations that guarded the Zephyrian homeworld. It had materialized inside their most secure system, as if the laws of physics didn't apply to human technology. "Attention Zephyrian fleet," Captain Quan's voice came over all communication channels, calm and professional despite being surrounded by over 10,000 enemy warships. "You have committed acts of genocide against human civilians. You have exactly 60 seconds to power down your weapons and surrender for trial under galactic law." Warlord Krextar, commanding from his flagship orbiting the homeworld, responded with rage and disbelief. "Surrender? One human ship against the entire Zephyrian fleet? You must be insane!" The massive Zephyrian armada turned its weapons toward the single human vessel. Plasma cannons that could melt asteroids, quantum torpedoes that could crack planets, and energy weapons that had conquered dozens of worlds, all focused on the Guangzhou's Vengeance. 50 seconds, Captain Quan announced, completely ignoring the fact that enough firepower to destroy a small moon was now aimed at her ship. "Open fire," Krextar screamed. "Destroy this arrogant human and show the galaxy what happens to those who defy us." The Zephyrian fleet unleashed everything they had. The space around the human ship erupted in nuclear fire as thousands of weapons discharged simultaneously. The energy release was visible from the planet's surface, lighting up the sky like a second sun. When the light faded, the aliens expected to see nothing but scattered debris. Instead, the Guangzhou's Vengeance hung in space completely undamaged. Every shot had passed harmlessly through the ship as if it existed in a different dimension from the weapons trying to destroy it. "Fascinating," Captain Quan commented. "Your weapons operate on the same basic principles we were using 300 years ago." 40 seconds remaining. General Mextar stared at his sensor readings in disbelief. "The energy signatures show that our weapons made contact, but the ship shows no damage at all. It's as if the vessel exists slightly outside normal space-time." The Zephyrian fleet fired again, this time with even more desperate intensity. They used weapons that were forbidden in civilized warfare, energy disruptors that could unravel matter at the atomic level. The bombardment continued for 30 seconds, turning the space around the human ship into a hell of pure energy. Again, every shot passed harmlessly through the target. "Time's up," Captain Quan announced. What happened next would be discussed in alien military academies for centuries to come. Assuming any of them survived to write the history books, the Guangzhou's Vengeance activated a weapon system that the Zephyrians couldn't even detect until it was too late. 27 Zephyrian warships, including some of their most powerful dreadnoughts, simply ceased to exist. They didn't explode, they didn't break apart, and they didn't leave any debris. One moment they were there, and the next moment they were gone, as if they had never been built. The quantum displacement array that Captain Quan had activated worked by removing matter from existence at the subatomic level. The targeted ships were retroactively edited out of reality, their atoms scattered across multiple dimensions where they could never be reassembled. "What have you done?" Krextar demanded, his voice shaking with fear for the first time in his military career. "Where are my ships?" "They have been removed from this reality," Captain Quan replied matter-of-factly. "Their crews experienced no pain. They simply stopped existing. 26 more ships will be removed every 60 seconds until you surrender." The demonstration continued across the galaxy as more human vessels revealed themselves. Commander Ji Unbei's dreadnought, the Inchin's Wrath, appeared at the edge of the Altarian system. Her ship was so massive that it had its own gravitational field, larger than the space stations that orbited the alien homeworld. General Taihyun Li, The same Altarian officer who had dismissed human concerns at the Galactic Council found himself facing a vessel that defied everything he thought he knew about military engineering. The Inchan's Wrath was not just a ship. It was a mobile battle station that incorporated technology from dimensions beyond normal space. "This is General Lee of the Altarian Defense Force," he transmitted to the human dreadnought. "You are in violation of our territorial space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Commander Bay's response was to activate a single weapon system called the Chronologic Disruptor. The effect was immediate and terrifying. Time began moving differently around different parts of the Altarian fleet. Some ships found themselves aging centuries in seconds. Their hulls crumbled to dust as decades of entropy were compressed into moments. Other vessels were frozen in temporal loops, their crews trapped in single moments that repeated endlessly. A few ships began moving backward through time, their weapons fire reversing course and striking their own hulls. "Impossible," General Lee whispered as he watched his invincible fleet being destroyed by forces that shouldn't exist. No species can control time itself. But humans had mastered temporal manipulation, along with dozens of other technologies that aliens considered theoretical impossibilities. The Chronologic Disruptor was just one weapon in an arsenal that included reality warping devices, consciousness disruptors, and weapons that could attack targets across multiple dimensions simultaneously. On distant worlds, Colonel Minho Seo led the first human ground assault in 30 years. His enhanced soldiers didn't use ships or shuttles to reach their targets. They simply opened personal quantum gates and stepped directly onto alien worlds from wherever they happened to be stationed. The fortress world of Dominion Prime, considered absolutely impregnable by the hegemony, fell in 18 minutes. The alien defenders discovered that human soldiers could phase through solid walls, regenerate from wounds that should have been fatal, and move faster than their automated defense systems could track. Colonel Seo himself demonstrated capabilities that seemed more like magic than technology. He lifted 50-ton defense turrets with his bare hands, moved so quickly that security cameras couldn't follow him, and survived direct hits from weapons that could destroy buildings. "Surrender now and your soldiers will be treated with dignity," he announced to the fortress commander. "Continue fighting and they will be removed from this reality like the Zephyrian ships." The fortress commander, who had never retreated from any battle in his long military career, immediately ordered his forces to lay down their weapons. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out on dozens of worlds. Human forces appeared without warning, demonstrated impossible capabilities, and accepted the immediate surrender of alien military units that had never tasted defeat. The message was clear to anyone with the intelligence to understand it. Humanity had been holding back for 30 years, and this was just a small sample of their true military might. The aliens had built their empires believing that they understood the limits of what was possible in warfare. They had been wrong about everything. As reports of human victories poured in from across known space, the Galactic Council called an emergency session. For the first time in galactic history, every single member species was ready to discuss unconditional surrender to a force they had previously considered beneath their notice. The age of alien dominance was ending, and the age of humanity was about to begin. The panic that swept through the galaxy after humanity's demonstrations was unlike anything in recorded history. Species that had ruled for thousands of years suddenly found themselves helpless before a force they had completely underestimated. Military leaders who had never known defeat were surrendering without firing a shot. Dr. Yuna Han, who had spent 15 years disguised as a simple linguistic researcher, studying alien communication patterns, revealed the most terrifying human capability of all. She appeared on every communication screen in the galaxy simultaneously, her image reaching into the private quarters of alien leaders, the bridge of every military vessel, and even the personal devices of ordinary citizens. "People of the galaxy," she began, her voice somehow speaking in the native language of every species that heard it. "I am Dr. Yuna Han of the Human Psionic Corps. For the past 3 decades, we have been listening." What she revealed next shook the foundations of galactic civilization. Humans had not only been gathering intelligence through conventional means, they had been telepathically monitoring alien thoughts and communications for decades. Every secret plan, every private conversation, every hidden agenda had been observed and recorded by human telepaths. "We knew about every attack before you planned it," Dr. Han continued. We were aware of every alliance before you formed it. When Warlord Krextar decided to increase taxes on human vessels, we knew about his decision 3 days before he announced it to his own officers. The implications were staggering. If humans could read minds across interstellar distances, then privacy itself was an illusion. No military secret was safe, no political negotiation was private, and no species could plan anything without human knowledge. Admiral Sung Ho Jang's main fleet finally revealed itself, emerging from the hidden dimensions where it had been waiting for 30 years. The vessels that appeared in normal space were beyond anything the aliens had imagined possible. Ships the size of small moons constructed from materials that seemed to bend reality around them, crewed by humans who had transcended normal biological limitations. The flagship, the Eternal Soul, was particularly impressive. It was larger than most space stations, and its hull incorporated technology that made it appear to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Weapon systems that the aliens couldn't even identify lined its surface, and the energy signatures it gave off suggested power sources that shouldn't have been possible. Counselor Vex Mira of the Hegemony. Admiral Jang's voice came over the communication channels. You are thinking about whether your species' hidden weapons could pose a threat to human forces. The answer is no. We have been aware of your secret antimatter research for 12 years. Dr. Kim Jae-won of our science division has already developed countermeasures. Counselor Vex Mira, who had been sitting in her private chamber planning exactly those thoughts, nearly collapsed from shock. The secret antimatter project was known only to 3 individuals in her entire government, and they had never discussed it over any communication system that could be monitored. Similar revelations came rapid fire as Admiral Jang demonstrated the scope of human intelligence gathering. He knew about the Altarians' experimental time dilation weapons, the Zephyrians' plans to attack the Kepler Federation, and even the personal financial dealings of individual alien leaders. We know everything, the Admiral stated simply. We have always known everything. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike any in the organization's history. Representatives who had once strutted around the chamber with arrogant confidence now cowered in their seats, afraid to even think about resistance for fear that humans might be listening to their thoughts. Ambassador Dongmin Park entered the chamber, but he was no longer the humble diplomat who had been ignored and insulted for years. He moved with quiet authority, and his presence seemed to command respect from aliens who had previously dismissed him as irrelevant. The Human Federation offers the following terms for peace, he announced without preamble. The Zephyrian Empire will be dissolved immediately. Warlord Krextar and his senior officers will be transferred to human custody for trial. All enslaved beings in Zephyrian space will be liberated within 72 hours. The demands continued, each one more sweeping than the last. The Galactic Council would be restructured under human oversight. All military weapons of mass destruction would be surrendered for inspection. Trade agreements would be renegotiated to ensure fair treatment of all species. And if we refuse, asked General Taehyun Lee, though his voice lacked any real conviction. Dr. Han answered by demonstrating her psionic abilities on a scale that defied comprehension. Every alien in the chamber suddenly experienced a shared mental image. The complete and total destruction of their military forces, accomplished without humans firing a single shot. Ships simply ceasing to exist, soldiers frozen in time, entire planets removed from normal spacetime. You will not refuse, she said calmly. We have seen the future. In every possible timeline where you resist, your species become extinct within 6 months. We are offering you survival and the chance to build something better. The psychological impact was devastating. Entire alien fleets were surrendering without their commanders even being ordered to do so. Soldiers were laying down weapons they had carried for decades, unable to face the possibility of fighting an enemy that existed beyond their understanding of reality. On the Zephyrian homeworld, Warlord Krextar sat in his command center surrounded by advisors who no longer met his eyes. His fleet was gone, his armies were surrendering, and his empire was collapsing around him. The being who had conquered dozens of worlds was facing defeat by an enemy he had dismissed as insects. How is this possible? He asked his science advisor, a brilliant strategist who had planned victories against dozens of species. How could we have been so wrong about everything? The advisor, who had spent his entire life studying warfare and military technology, could only shake his head in confusion. They were playing a game we didn't even know existed. While we were fighting with weapons, they were rewriting the rules of reality itself. Captain Sojin Kwan's voice came over the communication system one final time.
Warlord Krextar, you have 5 minutes to surrender yourself for trial.
If you attempt to flee or resist, you will be removed from existence along with anyone who assists you. Faced with the complete destruction of everything he had built, the mighty warlord who had terrorized the galaxy for decades walked out of his command center and surrendered to a human soldier who appeared to be barely half his size. Similar scenes were playing out across known space. Military leaders who had ruled through fear and intimidation were giving up without a fight. Politicians who had built careers on alien superiority were begging for mercy from the species they had spent decades oppressing. The Galactic Council voted unanimously to accept human terms for peace. There was no debate, no negotiation, and no alternative proposals. The aliens had finally encountered a force that was truly superior to them in every way that mattered, and their only choice was complete submission. Admiral Zhang appeared one final time on galactic communication networks, but his message was different from what the aliens expected. Instead of gloating about human victory or threatening further punishment, he spoke about the future. The age of conquest and oppression is over, he announced. Humanity did not reveal its true nature to rule over you, but to protect those who cannot protect themselves. We have spent 30 years watching species enslave each other, commit genocide, and treat weaker beings as disposable resources. This ends now. The revelation that humanity had been motivated by justice rather than conquest was perhaps the most shocking surprise of all. The aliens had assumed that any species with such overwhelming power would use it for domination and exploitation, because that was how they had always used their own strength. But humans were different. They had built the most powerful military force in galactic history not to conquer others, but to create a universe where the strong protected the weak instead of preying upon them. As the surrender documents were signed and the restructuring of galactic civilization began, one thing became clear to every alien observer: the galaxy would never be the same again. The age of fear was ending and the age of hope was about to begin, and it had all started with 43 humans who died carrying medicine to plague victims because they believed some things were worth dying for.